I know how to operate things. I know how to do these things. Okay, all right. Yes, there we go. I am not elderly. not yet. I know how to work things. If anybody's watching right now, how am I coming through? I hope I'm coming through. It looks like I'm coming through. It also looks like I'm like coming through like really loud. Ba-ba-da-bum-bum. Ba-da-bum-bum-bum. Okay, that one works. Okay, that one works. I feel like I'm getting ready to about to do a class assignment or something. I have all these highlighters, these pens. So, anyways, hi. How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Boy. Sure, whatever. I'm doing fine. Thank you. Even if you didn't ask, I'm doing fine. But I think you did. I really should have tested if I was actually recording. You know what? I am going to test if I'm like not recording, if my audio is coming through. I should have done this before, but I was a little bit of a busy beaver. You know what I could do instead is not do that and literally just listen to the thing. All right, you're gonna hear double of me for a moment. Ready, go. Oh, yep, you can hear me just fine. I know how to do streaming stuff. I've done streaming stuff before. I ain't a complete bozo. Okay, alrighty dighty. So, writing utensils, highlighters. So here's the thing. The thing in question. Sudraba. I wrote this. I self-published it 5 years ago. It took a little while. It is a little bit shorter than Sadra's. Let's compare them. Kapow. Just a little bit. They're not directly related stories, so there's no worry or concern of missing anything. So that yeah. So you can just pop in here and just be like, oh, okay. I will say this is a much darker story, at least compared to part one. Part one, there's some stuff in there that's a little bit meh. Part two will be getting a little bit more in tone with this one. I will say this: the end back portion of Sadra's, the last like sixth of the book, the tone starts to radically change, we'll say, or like maybe not radically change, but it changes a little bit, and it mirrors much more in line with what I have for Sudraba. So yes, I am going to. The reason why I have a couple different pens, some highlighters, is because I actually want to go through and so off the bat. The index is only alphabetized. I want to go back through and change it to where it is set by chapter, like I did for Sadra's Calling Part 1 and moving forward. So I want to do that, and then yeah, that's a big one. That's a very big one from the get-go. I don't know how that'll come across as I'm doing this reading. So if it's a little hiccupy in that regard, I apologize. The my brain. Then there's probably some stuff I need to edit in here that I've missed at some point, because I am a stubborn man, if anything. Not necessarily a proud one, but a stubborn one who will be like, I think I could do this. And this is where the narrator voice comes overhead and is like, he could not do this. Not as well as it would be if I just hired an editor, but in the same hand, there's something about the struggle that really just makes me want to be obnoxious to myself like that. So, that. Anything else? What else would I don't think there's much else I do want to kind of, like I said, the tone for this is much darker, like psychologically darker. I mean, there's some mildly graphic violence and stuff, but yeah, it a bit. That's about the best way I could put it. It's a little bit psychologically darker. So this is not going to be a fun jaunt. There is, I will be honest, probably the first couple. We gotta be mowing on a Saturday, which is when you should probably mow. It is 10 o'clock in the morning here. I shouldn't be upset. Darn you and your mowing when it's nice and sunny out on a Saturday or Saturday morning. How dare you? How dare you? Anyways, yeah. I don't have any more. So I'm just gonna start reading. And hopefully I'll read better than I did last time, since I was stumbling over my words and such. But we're gonna read the back of the book here, and then go from there. So. Venture swiftly through the Silver Kingdom, nestled in the eastern portion of the Faresh. Yes, I did say that. The Faresh continent lies the Kingdom of Sudraba, a country fixated on promoting its cultural and historical prominence within its borders and abroad. From weaving majestic tapestries of the cunning Prince Narlin within a castle plated in silver, to building temples to curry favor with the legendary lovers Dreslin and Mial, to collecting literature from across the continent and beyond. For generations, Sudraba's royalty has demonstrated to its neighbors that power does not simply lie at the tip of a spear. However, King Ablin V's marriage to a woman from the desert queendom of Zelia has angered the lords of Sudraba, and whispers of rebellion menace the stability firmly built throughout the recent generations. One night, an adulteress fleeing from her husband and a thief intent on completing his job encounter each other in the streets of Sudraba Castletown. Out of desperation, they flee from their troubles together, heading through the kingdom pursued by their separate problems. Their distrust for one another and their opposing views threaten to bring them both to ruin. Chasing the two as a group, resolute on bringing them to justice for the pair's transgressions. As the kingdom around them creeps towards a damning precipice, they will push ahead to wherever their stubbornness will take them. Dun, dun, dun. So yes, Sudraba, with the subtitle being The Adulteress and the Thief. The titular characters, as it were. And, I guess from the word go, will be. I hate both of these characters. I really don't like either one of them. The thief is the thief, you will see, and the adulteress might be a little harder to understand. It might make sense, but there's hate might be a harsher word for her. But these are not people I would necessarily gallivant around with, we'll say. But yeah. All right. So unfortunately for this one, I did not title the chapters, so they're just simply plainly labeled Chapter 1, 2, yada 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 yada. There is no blah, 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 blah. There is no there's an epilogue, but it's just listed as Chapter 18, and then there's no prologue. It's just Chapter 1 from the go. So, in total pages, we are looking at 330. So, about 100 pages less than, excuse me, what we had for Sadra's. And the size, roughly similar, you know, spacing and stuff. So, yes. So we'll start with the preface. The preface. It must be said with apologies in advance that this is an ugly tale I thought never had a chance. Though I hope you'll forgive me for this thread spun. Many stories are in the work. It has only begun. From the inner beatings within this breast to the outer ones I take. From the inner feelings I cannot undo and those terrors I create. I go wherever I go with caution in my heart. It still bleeds ugly, though. I cannot keep it apart. So once again I ask you to think of me no less than what the typical human is, which is a chaotic mess. And perhaps going forward, bounding into futures unknown, we'll build our world brighter with the seeds we hope are sown. So ready yourself to turn the page, for you will soon see the battle being waged. For greater goods and putting evils to rout, the story is not exactly what that's all about. Thank you for taking a chance on me. I mean it, no truly. And apologies one last time for this heart of mine, so festering, so unruly. So that is my little poem to you. Alright, so this one has a map as well. So here is that, and I was very, very naughty and did not download the image for it, but it is a map. And David also made the map. Actually, I'm going to grab something real quick. So David was the one who did the cover design. It's very dark to see that one. He did the cover design with ideas from me, like for Sadra's Calling, to have it in the lettering itself. But he did the design for it and everything, for the spine and stuff. He did the layout for this one. The layout for everything. However, the image was a painting that I had. Happy Console Gamer, if some people know, Johnny Millennium, his one friend, Rob Man, who's on every now and again, his wife. His wife did paintings and stuff, and I commissioned her to do this. And I'm actually going to grab it real quick so you can see it in person. So time out. Look at, there it is. Yeah, so there's a little bit more there. So yeah, exciting times. So good old kestrel. It's a cute little kestrel right there. Yeah, so that was the thing for it. So just so you get a little bit closer, I don't know how well this will come through. Obviously, you get mountains and the like, and then there's this little butte off in the distance. The kestrel puts its sights on. So perhaps there's some imagery and meaning behind all of that. I don't know. So okay, all right. So how this is going to work, I will read, and then if I get to a word that it needs some explanation, I'll either stop at the end of the page or somewhere real quick by, and then we'll go from there, as opposed to the with Sadra's we read through the chapter and then went back to the index afterward. So this one will be a little bit different. So looking here. Probably do maybe 2 chapters, depending on how quickly they go. Yeah, and that'll be it. We'll just do 2 chapters, and then next week, it'll be a Sunday reading because I work Saturday, so exciting times. So here we go. Chapter 1. Footsteps echoed throughout a narrow alleyway in the capital city, Sudraba. A woman, her blue nightgown flapping in the wind, frantically searched for a place to hide among the crowded stone homes and buildings. Through quick gasps for breath, she hastily checked shadowed nooks, only to pass them over and continue down the ill-lit path. With each step the woman took, the chill of the unevenly laid stonework seeped into her legs, stealing her energy. Patches of fuzzy candlelight glowing from stained windows protected the alleyway against the weight of night. The woman soon emerged into a cramped intersection, which split into 3 directions. To the right, a few hanging lanterns illuminated the path, revealing house walls pockmarked with crumbling mortar in need of replacement. With a strong enough shove, sections of the walls would easily cave. A little farther down, a small tavern sign hung above an opening before the alleyway bent out of sight. The left offered much the same. Instead of a tavern, a cobbler sign precariously dangled from its post. Across from where the woman stood, the path eventually widened and intersected with a larger street busy with commoners welcoming the night with joyful revelry. Fearing hesitancy, Anastasia glanced down each of her options. She clenched her jaw and breathed sharply through her nostrils. She propped herself against the wall of the home to her right. The cold climbed, numbing as it did so. Gazing toward the tavern, 2 thoughts pounded in her mind, like the distant beating of a drum, which grew louder and louder with each repetition, refusing to be ignored. What? So I did the same thing again for this one, is I italicize, even though that's really fuzzy, I italicize inner thoughts, and the like. So, what can I do? Nothing. No, it's not less a question. It's like, what can I do? Nothing. Usually, you ladies wait until after your first night to sob some nonsense prayer to Rioja and Zalnia. Stern voice seemingly oozed from the walls. Embrace it. Why make life harder on yourself? It doesn't need your help. Who said that? Her head jerked this way and that as she glanced around, eyeing in the direction of the unfamiliar voice. She spotted a man partially hidden by a portion of a wall that jutted out farther than the rest. Her focus drew the man, who looked roughly the same age as her, out into the alleyway. As she watched him discard the cloak of darkness, curiosity caved to her growing concerns. The man wore a haggard look with a chaotic mess of hair, as strands of greasy black covered parts of his thin face. His ears, hid under a mat of hair. His sunken cheeks and pale complexion made the passerby's eyes his most prominent feature, black to match a starless night, choking away any spark of emotion, and large. His eyes saw her truths and unnerved her. I'm not a whore. I'm not a whore. Anastasia's gaze remained fixed upon the stranger before her. What was that? The stranger leaned toward her and cupped a hand to his ear. You're going to have to be a bit more confident if you want to earn the silvers this wretched city is willing to dole out. I am not a whore. Just like that, out here, had me fooled. The man laughed, which sounded more like a weak cough than anything jovial. She glared back in response, which only prolonged his wheezing. What are you wanting me to do? Do you always taunt strangers in need? Eventually, her prolonged stare quieted the man. Why are you talking to me? Leave me alone. Anastasia waved her hand, gesturing for the stranger to leave. He snorted and then vanished behind the protrusion. Why are people so strange? Is he incapable of surmising the difficult situation I'm facing? Why even bother me Like, why even bother me at all? Aggravation stayed within her mind. Then, as quickly as it had manifested, a potential idea sprung to the forefront of her thoughts. He's the first to even say anything to me. Maybe I can use him to escape Sudraba. She pushed herself away from the wall, but her legs wobbled, resistant to such a sudden change of heart. Wait, sir, please, help me. I need to get out of here, out of Sudraba. Only the faint commotions of the tavern and the street ahead, busy with drinking and merriment, answered her pleas. She called again and tried to move forward, but to no avail. Her legs failed her. It was as though a cruel prank. It was as though a cruel prank. Okay. It was as though a cruel prank had been played by her mind, and the man was nothing more than a figment of false hope. She fell to her hands and knees, ignoring the jolt of pain in her arms. The woman moved away from the intersection and sat down, fully welcoming the coldness of the stones. She brought her knees up to her breast and wept, irritated by her predicament. After a few stifled sobs, she punched her leg and cursed her poor luck. Excuse me, madam. The voice was close and unfeeling. I knew you would come back. She peered through strands of her long brown hair. Dread bolted throughout her body upon seeing who stood in front of her. Oh no. Lord Gebhard requests your presence, Anastasia. Her husband's puppet stared down, his crooked nose at her. His pursed lips smacked together and parted as he sucked in a deep breath. He shivered in his uniform, a light blue long-sleeved top made of cotton, with pairs of dome-shaped copper buttons running down the front and matching trousers with a single row of the same, but slightly smaller, buttons on the outer side of the pant legs. She nudged Anastasia's legs with his right foot. He instructed me to bring you back in any manner I saw fit, as long as you were alive enough for proper punishment. Before the uniformed man could yank her to her feet, a fine dagger threatened his fat neck. Like a menace from the dark, he was seized by a violent force. The thirsty steel and a strong grip ripped the guard out of his intentions. Fingers, like metal clamps, dug deeply at Lacroix's elbow. He swallowed to clear his throat. You'll do no such thing, the black-eyed stranger spat. If you want to see the morning light and have Rioja's gift greet your fat hide, you'll leave this woman alone. Now, Rioja's gift is what the Sudrabans call their son. And not child, but like the son. So, I'm under direct orders from Lord Gebhard, and he's commanded me to bring this deceitful woman back to him. He turned his head to catch a glimpse of his assailant, but the attacker tightened his hold. Many of his men are waiting for me to give the word. One shot for me, and you try, and your words will drip from your throat. His breath grew hot with heated intent. You'll be cradled in Zalnia's embrace before your men even arrive. So, real quick, step back here. So Zalnia is, those of Sudraba believe once you die, you are returned to Zalnia to become whole once more. Good lives lived are treated to a euphoric experience, while bad lives lived are punished by Grigdor before being reunited. And basically, Zalnia's embrace is like dying. The being the dead. So, Anastasia's hazel eyes widened and her legs stiffened as she pushed her back hard into the wall, as though she was trying to burrow herself into it. I cannot return to my husband. Not now. Her actions had ruined enough lives. The guard wrenched his elbow out of the stranger's grip and opened his mouth. However, his words never sounded. His throat erupted, with blood from the gash showering the surrounding area where he stood. Sickly croaking sounds came from the dying man as he grasped at his wound. Anastasia scurried further back into the alley to avoid Lacroix, who no longer had the life to stand, as she watched as the killer briskly wiped off his blade and stowed it away in its sheath, which was cloaked by layers of filthy rags. Her breathing came in gulps as she gazed at the scene before her. The stranger darted back to his hiding spot behind the protrusion. Moments later, he peeked around the wall. Anastasia had not followed him, but remained paralyzed with indecision. Disappointed, he motioned for her to join him. However, his request was greeted with a blank stare. Wasting no more time, he returned to his own work. As soon as he disappeared, 3 drunkards smashed out of the tavern and into the alleyway. Punches and kicks flew wildly. The clamor grew with the increasing number of spectators. Many piled out of the tavern to watch, jeering on one man or encouraging another, while some offered drinks if one particular man won. Neighbors peered out of their doorways and windows to locate the origin of the raucous behavior. Eventually, a few idle viewers glanced toward the intersection, catching a glimpse of a woman disappearing out of sight, and a slumped-over figure left behind. The fight abruptly stopped as people realized someone had been murdered. The tussle gave Anastasia the moment of clarity she needed. She bolted to her violent savior. Behind the corner, she found a thick knotted rope leading to the rooftop. She clutched it tightly and pulled herself up slowly. What am I doing? Halfway up the 20-foot ascent, her hands ached and arms trembled. Use your legs. Directly above her, the stranger's head poked out from beyond the roof's edge. For a moment, she did not quite understand what he meant, so she tried placing her feet against the wall. After struggling to climb up, she glanced upward and caught the stranger shaking his head. She opened her mouth to snap a retort, but she was forced to focus on retaining her grip on the rope as the stranger pulled it up to help her the remainder of the way. After she was safely on the rooftop, he jerked the remaining rope out of sight as shouts of murder grew louder and louder from below. He pressed down on Anastasia's back, his touch rigid, and gestured for her to be silent, which she did by studying her new surroundings. Red clay tiles dressed the slightly slanted pitch of the rooftops. In one section, the tiles had been removed and 3 metal rods stood in their place, stuck in a support beam. The rope was tightly wrapped around them, like a snake squeezing the life out of its prey. Leaning against them rested a badly worn satchel, which had a rod sticking out of the opening. From this spot, a decent portion of the city could be seen. To the north, the castle on the hill prominently glistened, as though it radiated with moonlight. To the south, more of the same style of building snaked this way and that, until the city wall. In the west, the dividing walls of the Garnita Ward, which segregated the rich from the poor, shielded all but the upper portions of the mansions from view. Eastwardly, large openings and illumination spilled from the market streets as sellers finished their final sales of the day. Down in the intersection, people gathered around the fallen body. 3 other guards wearing uniforms that matched Lacroix's had arrived. 2 of them checked the body while the third kept the gawkers an appropriate distance away. In hushed tones, the 2 spoke carefully to avoid any eavesdropping. Never imagined Lacroix would go this way. Lyron rubbed his nose and forcefully breathed out of his nostrils. Ugh. The scent of blood never agreed with my senses. Doing any sort of work seems to have the same effect on you. Shigan bent down to better inspect the fatal wound dealt to his commander. Hey now, drinking's work. It takes effort to enjoy a pitch or 3 and not have Lord Gebby or Rambert pissing in my ear about this or that needing to be done. Yeah, that's some talent you got there, Byron. Shigan shook his head and pulled out a blue handkerchief, which he placed over the gash. The fabric greedily drank the blood and stained purple. Damn, that cut is deep. Small wonder his mouth didn't save him. He'd have frightened half the city with his shouting, and put half of them the rest with his breath. Byron tossed his own handkerchief to his friend, chuckling as he did. He had the foulest breath. That he did, Shigan sniggered, while watching the handkerchief fall to the ground. He pulled out a small knife from his boot. Shame he can't defend himself now. But I imagine he's having a wonderful return to our wonderful goddess Zalnia. Byron lifted an arm, only to let go and watch it thud onto the ground. He shuddered. You think so? Shiggin cut off some of the buttons from Lacroix's uniform and placed them in his pocket. Sweet places, no. I'd be surprised if Grigdor wasn't flogging his foul ass with glass every step of the way to Zalnia's bouncing tits. Who is Grigdor, by the way? Grigdor is... Well, a couple things. The Garnita Ward is the ward in Sudraba Castletown where the wealthy live. I already kind of mentioned. Grigdor is seen by the Sudrabans as a god of death. So, kind of think Grim Reaper. So, anyways, no, I'll read that again. Sweet blazes, no. I'd be surprised if Grigdor wasn't flogging his foul ass with glass every step of the way to Zalnia's bouncing tits. Byron gave a loud laugh at his own remark and turned to see some of the gawkers greeting him with a mixture of disdainful and quizzical looks. He gave them a rude gesture and shouted, "Is this a damn show? If you're not tossing us coins, go toss yourselves back into the tavern. A way to endear Lord Gebhard's name to the people. Well, maybe these flatheads should be gawking over something else other than a dead body. They look and look, but can't tell us a damned thing about what happened." And there's no sign of Anastasia. The two turned their focus to the blood spatter against the wall. Well, she flew into the sky. She ran into that Market Street, I'm guessing. Though I have no idea how people aren't shouting their heads off right now about seeing some barely dressed woman dashing through the markets. Byron watched as Shiggin ran his fingers around what looked to be a silhouette devoid of blood. She couldn't have known Lacroix was so close. Well, she smelled him. She knows she's being hunted, but to take him without much of a struggle worries me. Not to say she's some delicate flower, but Lacroix wasn't a weak-armed flathead either. You think she's got an armed friend? I hope that's all it is, a friend. But Lord Gebhard's not as well liked by the commoners. Could have been some gutter trash who saw the uniform and wanted to make a name for himself. Who knows what runs through their heads anymore? For all we know, another Lord's men could have done this. Byron gave a heavy sigh and stood. I'll spread the word to the others. Shiggin collected another button before standing up and forcing his way through the crowd. Best tell Rambert first. It's going to be one of those nights. On the rooftop, Anastasia observed the stranger remove one of the tiles and select a place where he seemed satisfied with the footing. The height did not bother her, but the coarseness of the tiles felt unpleasant. She forced herself to crouch, but all she wanted to do was run. She massaged her thighs and listened to the crowd below. Nowhere to go but through now. Stay low when you run. The stranger delivered his order in a whisper, more preoccupied with what he was doing than if she heard him or not. He swung the tile back and forth, contemplating which direction to throw it. Then, with his decision made, he flung the object with all his might toward the cobbler's home. He raced to his satchel as the tile exploded upon impact. Without looking back, he focused on his next destination. The night was still stained black, and he needed to escape Sudraba before the break of dawn, with or without Anastasia. "I wasn't expecting you to come tonight, Tegan." Lisea teasingly pulled on his arm. "Couldn't resist a quick visit before your troublesome journey, could you?" She stood at the corner of her bed, which was walled by yellow velvet curtains, leaning against a bedpost of carved cedar, running her portly index finger along the curvature of the post, which was cut in a way to resemble a curvaceous figure holding up the canopy. She cast a sideways glance at Anastasia, who sat in a chair beside a writing desk, before bringing her focus back to Tegan, who paced a few steps in front of the door. "Now's not the time, Lisea." Tegan walked throughout the room and blew out 2 candles, leaving only one to illuminate the entire room. He did not trust curtains to fully veil them from prying eyes. Then he opened the door and peered out into the hallway. After checking both directions, he closed the door and continued in a quieter tone. "We need your help. We need some proper clothes, and I need a much larger bag. Preferably, these things won't be as tattered as some of the things you've supplied me." "You never seemed to mind before." Lisea studied Anastasia and wondered what forced her to resort to prostitution. "You know, I can't help her, not like the other ones. Only proper man will do for this woman. But they do not frequent my establishment. She needs new clothes, Lysaea. Tegan shook his head. Took his head. Tegan shook his head before wagging a finger at Anastasia. I can't parade a half-naked woman around Sudraba. They'll have my head on a pike before morning. Oh, you told me you never take companions with you. I didn't come here to argue with you. Will you dress her, or must I take the clothes myself? Unapologetically, Tegan stared at Lysaea. Why this back and forth? This is more thinking. Why this back and forth? When all I want is to freshen up and get out of here. Since when have you cared about every little act or move of mine? You won't stop me, or I'll leave her here, even against your wishes. Lysaea gave a sigh, which Tegan answered with a grunt. She hiked up her silk dress and walked towards Anastasia. Her shoulders heaved and dropped as she slowly positioned herself in front of her guest, who had been silent, trying her best to ignore the conversation. Their eyes met, and the madam softly bit the insides of her cheeks. Pelia is in the room across the hall. She'll be happy to see you. She did not face Tegan as she gestured to the door. When I get back, I expect her to be ready. He took his satchel and left the room. Yeah, I hear you, master. Lysaea mockingly bowed before turning her attention to Anastasia. And you're far too nice looking to be some peasant's wife, or a butcher's daughter. Are you someone's courtesan? A lord's maid who has given more than a passing glance at night? Who are you? I'm only someone looking to get out of Sudraba. Anastasia's voice trailed off as her wandering gaze caught a painting hanging on the wall. Yellow flowers coated a field, giving way to a crystal blue ocean. On the right side, a cliff quickly rose from the ocean, mostly covered with great green trees. A small pristine building stood glistening at the edge of the cliffside, as if challenging the water to surge forth and sweep it away. The sky was blanketed by heavy gray, which stunted the color of the scenery. She rubbed her eyes and turned her attention back to the matron. Lysaea crossed her arms and let her dress fall back into form. She tapped her foot impatiently, waiting for a better answer, but the thought of this woman stealing Tegan away plagued her mind. She let out a raspy sigh and asked who Anastasia was again. It seems lies and half-truths will not suffice, will they? They won't. If I'm to help, I must know. Fine if you must. I am Lord Gabbard's wife. She fidgeted in her seat, which creaked and moaned as her gaze met Lysaea's. What? Do you want me to shout it? I will if it convinces you to give me what I need. Anastasia? She knew the answer and did not wait for a response. She raced to her armoire and searched through the different linens for an appropriate outfit. Huh. The matron muttered under her breath while pulling out the proper clothes. That foolish bastard, stealing a lord's wife and having the audacity to bring her here, to my brothel. They'll chop you to pieces. Do you ever think of the consequences, Tegan? Yes, but what does that frighten you so? Anastasia rose from her seat and approached the madam. Lord Gabbard does not know I am here. I told you. All I want to do is leave. I heard you the first time, and I'll help to make it so, but some of his men come here frequently. I'd rather not think about what they say when their thoughts come from their cocks. You need clothes and to get out of here before daybreak. She grabbed a plain brown long-sleeved kirtle and tossed it to Anastasia. Here, try this on. Wearing the kirtle, Anastasia walked cautiously in the streets with Tegan beside her, dressed in a matching long-sleeved shirt and trousers. The pair wore snug fur boots, with each step made a faint click as the soles, made of thin strip of hardened leather, hit stone. Tegan's satchel had been replaced with a larger pack, and he wore the straps on both shoulders. Why can't I read? He wore the straps on both shoulders. The two walked towards the smallest eastern gate in Sudraba, commonly referred to as the Narlan Gate, or Narlan's Gate. So, quick. Narland Gate. Oh, okay. I didn't really say anything. But, yeah, so it's the small gate north of the main eastern gate of Sudraba Castle Town. Narland eventually became king of Sudraba after reclaiming his father's throne, romanticized as the prince thief because he had many lovers all throughout the city by stealing their hearts. The gate was located in the merchant section of Sudraba, called the Silver Road. During the daytime, the area came alive with noise as local and nearby merchants peddled their crops and wares. At night, after the merchants were done, only vagrants and street children scoured the road in hopes of finding forgotten or spoiled food to eat. Occasionally, some were fortunate to find dropped coins or belongings left behind to sell elsewhere. Often, these sorts of discoveries led to fights amongst them, which had to be quelled by patrolling guards. And 2 guards stationed at the Narland Gate surveyed the area with the enthusiasm of watching stones crumble to dust. They wore standard-issue gear for Sudraban City Guard, iron breastplates coated in a thin layer of silver, which glistened in the moonlight. Though pricey, this helped enlist young men for duty, as boys saw the armor and thought it made them look strong. However, and perhaps more importantly for many of them, they noticed many women took a fancy to the guards. These 2 were no exception. One of them leaned against the wall between the gate and a ladder. The other propped himself up by his halberd, the butt jammed into a hole between a couple of stones that belonged to the street. "Aye, looky here, Walt. A man and his wench taking a late-night stroll." Rick let out a raspy laugh as he put more pressure on his weapon. "Shut it." Walt gave a sour look to Rick before facing Tegan and Anastasia. "Quiet night, eh? Better to spend it with someone than no one, eh? And I was not told I would be dealing with an interrogation." He shot a glance at both the guards. "I thought your boss hired city guards to do their job and take bribes like good guard dogs should." "Prickly as ever, Tegan. In a bit of a hurry, Walter." Walter grinned as the thief produced... Oh, surprise, Tegan's a thief. Walter grinned as Tegan produced a small leather sack from the side of his pack. The clinking of the coins pierced his thoughts. All he could think of was nothing more than the debauchery he had been planning since he was informed of this extra duty. After being handed the money, he gave his new fortune a shake and beamed stupidly. "Hey, where's mine?" Rick ogled his fellow guard's money, not paying attention to Tegan. Another bag of coins, smaller than the first, smacked him in the face as a result. He dropped his halberd, which clanged loudly in protest. The pouch's contents rained onto the streets, ringing like tiny bells in the silence of night. The guard gnashed his teeth and bent down to pick up his weapon. "Just leave him, Rick." He motioned for his friend to stop. "I'd rather run the son of a bitch through, Walt." "Your life is not more valuable than my time, you greedy worm. Lord Robin would be upset if he heard you held me up." Anastasia cast a glance at the 2 guards, but she did not recognize either of them. What does Lord Robin have to do with this man? How do they know each other? Does this murderer know who I am? How could Robin have planned to have Tegan run into me tonight? The guards don't recognize me either. What's going on? Walt thrust his halberd point in front of Rick's face. The 2 traded looks, with Walt shaking his head in disapproval as his partner let out a heavy groan and went about picking up the loose coins. While Rick picked up his bribe, Walt climbed the ladder, reaching a small landing at the top of the city wall. A wheel to control the opening and closing the gate was located there. He rested his halberd against the wall, grabbing one section of the wheel and pulled it down. He did this 7 times before checking on them below. Rick was still looking for loose coins while Tegan and his wench slipped through the gate. Moments later, the 2 had vanished into the wilderness of night. Hastily, he closed the gate behind him. "You find it all, Rick?" "I think so." He bent low to the ground and brushed his hand across the surface, hoping to find more. "Best be less thinking and more knowing. If someone finds out about this, the last thing I'll hear from you is the choking sound you'll be making when I ram those coins down your throat." And damn that woman. Lord Gebbard removed his silk gloves and tucked them into his belt. Unbuttoning his sky-blue jerkin, he brusquely walked towards the library. His most trusted servant, Rambert, who stole a glance at each object they passed, whether it was a door, a painting, or a vase, followed him obediently. Angrily, he added, "Lacroix gets himself killed and none of his men are competent enough to find Anastasia running scared through the streets. She's practically naked. I'd think for as silly as you all are with your cocks, the first damn thing you'd find is a naked woman running throughout Sudraba. Lacroix couldn't find his own ass with both hands and a map, Lord Gebbard. Rambert rubbed his short black hair with his hand. If I remember correctly, Rambert, you had such glowing praise for him before he learned his throat was necessary for living. Upon entering the library, Lord Gebbard immediately went to his writing table and sat down. Various journals, memos, and notes made for a suitable rest as he elbowed the table and cupped his forehead. He closed his green eyes, pondering every mistake he had made recently. Is this punishment from Rioge? What could I have done to elicit the wrath of the gods? She's the one that's done ill to me. Why must I suffer for it? Letting out a deep sigh, he turned to his guard and divulged his honest feelings on the matter. Why can't I simply divorce her without her being present? Let her flee to the Baldna Isles for all I care. The Baldna Isles. Baldna Isles, a chain of isles near the Zelian coast. Far east in the glimmering sea from Sudraba. Sir, the other lords would ridicule you till you left Sudraba. Some may privately enjoy being a cuckold, but publicly it's political ruin. Lord Desir would certainly not stand for disparaging remarks against his daughter's character, truthful or not. So, the other lords can be flayed by Grigdor for all I care. And Lord Desir? Including him. One's honor is not above learning the truth. Lord Gebbard slammed his hands on the table, causing the papers to scatter. Is this Lord Desir's machinations? The Honorable Lord Desir? I cannot have his daughter destroy everything I've tried to build. She wasn't there when mother and father died. She wasn't there when I had to drag my name from the damned cellars to be noticed by the others. Conceited, pitiful lords. She won't be there for me when I rise to become the voice of the king. Those were all thoughts. Now he's speaking again. But I get it. The laws are what they are. Unless she's dead, she'll have to be present for the king to annul our marriage. Laws have a funny way of making something easy difficult. Rambert chuckled softly. Then I'll save Grigdor the trouble. Lord Gebbard rose from his seat. I will strike out and find her. She will be found. Of course, sir. Rambert smirked. Laughter swirled in his blue eyes. Gather some of your men and pay her dear father a visit. He may be late, but with a few choice words, he will relent and tell you his precious daughter's location without objection. And if he does not know, either way, report back to me. She'll be hunted down like the animal she wants to be. From one of the table's drawers, Lord Gebbard produced a pistol and studied its features. He used a wheel as a lock and did not require a lit match cord to be fired. Rain would not hinder its firing. So promised the gunsmith, he bought it from. It would need to be a useful tool, as he planned to put such a promise to the test. That is the end of Chapter 1. Yeah, so there is a lot of jumping back and forth, and that's kind of how this is. Each chapter will have a couple of perspectives, and they kind of will jump through back and forth. I mean, it's marked in the book and stuff, but yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit more, a little bit different than Sadra's. Sadra starts off a lot nicer than this one. This one starts off pretty rough. So. Alright, we'll do Chapter 2, and then we'll call it from there. Chapter 2. To Anastasia, the night painfully dragged itself into the light of morning. The relief she felt from escaping the city dissipated into a tiring paranoia, dogging her every idea. Alternating between hurried steps and sluggish ones, she repeatedly checked to see if Lord Gebbard's men were pursuing them. Though there were no signs, the constant waxing and waning of tension had become incredibly taxing. Her stomach bellowed periodically for nourishment in protest to its current treatment. Her psyche did not avoid punishment either. Every stumble, every moment of slackened pace was met with prodding from Tegan. His verbal daggers were answered with grunts of determination as she pressed on to Danlos. For now, she had no other choice but to persevere through the stress. Dawn broke as the two crested a tall hill. In front of them, a gray smudge stained the green of the eastern horizon. The Ramaic mountain chain, referred to as the spike helm of Sudraba, towered in the north above the tree line that dressed its base. The road, built with concrete, coated with a thin layer of melted silver during the years of Queen Zvensi's reign, snaked over small hills before disappearing into the scenery toward the fort city Danlos. The farther away from either city, the more worn down the road became. In many places, travelers would pick up stones and try to salvage the silver to sell. Once they had the shavings, they would toss the stones far from the road. The threat of imprisonment for defacing the road was met with blatant disregard, because no ruler since Queen Zensi possessed the might to enforce the decree. So, all right. Let's see here. What? Let's see. Oh, there we go. All right, Zvensi, queen who once ruled Sudraba, known to have expanded its borders to Palmina, but was referred often by her enemies and those who remained after she died as the Tyrant Queen. Many farmers and their families had gathered bushels of fruits and grains from their harvests, determined to reach the markets for other families, even if it meant leaving in the dark. In lines they plodded on the road to Sudraba and Danlos, some using eyes still caked with dreams to watch their path. A wasted moment could spell riches or disaster for the farmers as they tried to sell all their goods and return empty in the cart, but heavy in the purse. Most passed the two lonely travelers without so much as a grunt. However, some did not fear arriving later and trusted their business prowess to make up for lost time. These families exchanged morning pleasantries along the way with whomever they passed. Riosh, be good, smiling upon us so wonderfully this morning. Aye, pray Grigdor rests today and come on another. The smell of rain is coming from the southwest. Best to get back home early today. The storm will be here by dusk. Oh, did you hear that, Tegan? Rain today, Anastasia echoed. She rushed up beside him and placed her hand on his shoulder, bristling as she did. Patting lightly, she repeated the information, but he continued his pace. Under labored breath, she muffled curses and stayed alongside her guard hound. Why does he refuse to speak to me? Before long, they reached a sign indicating the spot was closer to Danlos than Sudraba. There, Tegan carefully removed his pack and gently rested it against the wooden post of the sign. The traffic had ceased, so Tegan used the lull to observe the road leading back to Sudraba. Content no one was following them, he turned to Anastasia, who had taken the much-needed opportunity to rest by grabbing the post and leaning against it with her arm. Are you ready? Ready for what? The retort came quickly out of Anastasia's mouth. She was in no mood for vague questioning. The quicker she could get a meal, and a warm one at that, the happier she would be. To do your part, we need to get into Danlos, and you keeping a clear mind will make that happen. He picked up his bag, observing his traveling partner coolly as she shuddered and took a step back. I don't need you to act like my wife. Then what do you need me to do? To not act stupid. If you start acting like an addle-brained fool, the guards are not going to let us through the gate, nor do I want to bribe them more than I must. I prefer to keep most of the money I earn. If need be, I can find other ways in, but you'll be on your own. Tegan pointed to the northern tree line before he continued. They are good for hiding, but you'd more likely end up a morsel for the Priani. Now that I think about it, that would solve your problems with your husband. I'm not a child. Her arms tensed up as she thought of striking him. Her arm tensed up as the thought of striking him thundered through her head. Never said you were, Tegan shot back, without raising his voice. He shifted the backpack until he felt comfortable and began marching toward Danlos once more. And the Priani. A large woodland creature has been known to eat those who get lost in wooded areas. Are you certain? I would have wagered my library, and then some, that she would have sought her father for protection. No one she could rightfully trust in Sudraba could help and protect her from my reach. Not on such a short notice. Lord Gebbard slid his chair back and stood, stretching as he did so, studying Rambert's expression. He presumed there was more unwanted news, and braced himself against the nearby windowsill. He peeked outside at the streets of the Garnita ward below. How could she have escaped the ward at all? Or all the men I'm paying drunken slobs more ready to visit a whorehouse than to do their duties? What else? My lord, it seems like last night was quite busy. He scratched his head as more of a distraction than to relieve an itch. How so? It doesn't fix the earlier failures completely, but something I have learned is that Narlan's Gate was used last night. Lord Gebbard turned away from the window and faced his servant. Narlan's Gate? Yes, my lord, the one north of the eastern gate. I know where it is, Rambert. Lord Gebbard seethed as he grabbed a small tome from his desk and tossed it at him, who easily caught the projectile. I'm not a child who has been shirking his studies. I know my own damn hometown. Forgive me. Quit wasting your breath and tell me of these more important details. Any word on who passed through? I haven't, but I know who to ask. Who? A pair of guards named Walter and Rick. And then do what you do best and ask them nicely to provide information. They are Lord Robin's men. If we act against them, they will retaliate. Naturally, but I don't care, for Huge himself comes thundering from the sky to protect them. Find out who they let through. I'll spread the word among the men to be appropriately cautious. I'll make them talk, Lord Gebbard. Rambert bowed respectfully and speedily departed his master's library to retrieve some belongings from his personal quarters. He was not fearful of either Walter or Rick. He had often seen them at Lyceus, sullying their names in the minds and ears of the ladies at every opportunity. As he left his room, a crooked smile crossed his face. The streets would be washed red with blood if Robin had a hand in Anastasia's escape. Lord Gebbard flopped into his chair. Hatred boiled over in his mind as he slammed his fist on the table. Damn him and his conniving ways. First he butters up the others to earn himself new honors. Then those same honors I told him in confidence I was seeking to earn. And now he has a hand in this farce? What did I do for you to hate me so, Robin? May Grigdor hound you every step to Zalmia's embrace. Then he remembered Rambert may not have fully finished his report. What else could have happened last night? The question lingered momentarily before he set about his own tasks. He would not allow his men to be disadvantaged by the possible fighting to come. They would drench the gutters with blood and guts of the followers of Lord Robin. Duval, the calls echoed throughout the expansive and illustrious halls of the king's palace. Massive murals decorated the walls, illustrating Sudraba's rich history, from its founder Sudraba to the first king and queen, to the radiant but tyrannical Queen's Vency, to a three-piece tapestry portraying the story of the romantic prince Narlan reclaiming his throne. Sudraba's history, told through its royalty, could be experienced by these masterful woven pieces, a process started by King Ablin I to trumpet his kingdom's culture and history, and that had been continued to the fifth of his name. Duval, how could a zillion be so difficult to find? Not like it wouldn't stick out like a mangled tooth. He chuckled. Then he started to sprint through the halls. The patrolling guard stayed cleared and ignored his loud shouts as they dodged ungracefully out of the way. Eventually, the messenger found Sir Duval in the dining room, sitting alone, away from a group of guards, drinking water and whittling on a small chunk of oak. Duval, King Ablin V requests your presence immediately. Your water tastes odd, Sir Duval observed. Ignoring the urgency of the messenger, he continued to carve diligently. Duval, if you do not come quickly, King Ablin will become very cross with you. And I'm already cross with you. Sir Duval rose from his seat, towering over the chubby messenger. Do not try to act as though you know the king better than me. You weren't there in the great desert with us. But if you had been, you would have died first. Brushing his white mantle back, he revealed his sheathed blade. Touching the ivory, encrusted hilt, Sir Duval calmly spoke. If words are not the only form of courage you have, come. I'm one of the king's messengers. Idle threats from someone of your ilk will not unnerve me. He reached for his own dagger. Take him down, Harlan. Drinks on us if you do. Yeah, the son of a bitch only dresses like that because he can't be like us. As Queen Fauchi's personal guard, Sir Duval took the brunt of the hatred intended for his master. Their words did not cut deep. How could they? They did not know him, nor the ordeals and struggles he overcame living in Zilia. The spiteful words spat at him as a child thoroughly toughened his mind against such attacks. The words of a stranger were nothing more than a temporary noise to be ignored and silenced, if necessary. However, when their words carried poisonous intent, he acted in kind. If their aggressive behavior went unchallenged, they would only double their efforts. He waited for an attack, bracing for a fight he knew would never come. His brown eyes shifted on the messenger's face, noticing a shift from tense hostility to defeated passivity. "What does King Ablin, the fifth of his name, request of this humble servant of Queen Falcines?" The messenger accepted he could not strike at Devon. "Not out in the open like this." Softening his stance, he replied through gritted teeth, "Sir Devon, King Ablin the Fifth requests your presence immediately. An urgent matter has shown itself, which the king believes you are best suited to remedy." "Dutifully noted." Duval stowed his carving knife away and set the whittled wood on the table. "Take me to our king." The king of Sudraba's appearance always surprised other nearby rulers and their courts, who were more familiar with the king's desire to enrich his kingdom's culture than his adventures as a youthful prince. They imagined a scholarly soft man, easy to persuade and dictate his rule, but truth rarely walked hand in hand with assumption and rumor. He towered over most of his loyal subjects, and his broad shoulders provided an immense physical presence which was offset by his gentle voice. Often, he found himself repeating declarations and orders because of it. He could easily speak with booming command, but King Ablin V believed shouting all his orders would lessen any sense of anger or urgency when he truly felt it. He greatly disliked wasting his breath, and grew to appreciate those gifted with a wonderful sense of hearing. And Sir Duval was one such blessed person. Duval, forgive me. You must have been eating breakfast when my messenger disturbed you." The king watched his friend start to kneel before he stopped. It was a habit from an old life, which refused to fade away. King Ablin required one to be courteous, not subservient, when meeting with him privately. He refused to mention his wife's guard's stuttered motion, and greeted his friend with a massive hand clapping his shoulder. "Quite the contrary. I had only finished my meal." Sir Duval kindly returned the gesture. Piercing the friendly exchange with an ill-tempered tone, the messenger repeated what the Zillion had said about Sudraba's water. He gave a smug grin, beaming from the doorway, leading into the king's private reading room. He expected the king would not tolerate servants. He liked openly berating his kingdom. His half-witted expression soured as he turned from Sir Duval's blank stare to face his king's incredulous countenance, with a simmering rage dancing in his emerald eyes. "Did I not dismiss you already?" King Ablin observed each word pointedly strike at his messenger's assurance that he had embarrassed Sir Duval. He hated this game, and the fact that they were willing to play it so poorly only angered him further. "Are you not of the same allegiance? Must you, too, try to bury daggers in honest people's hearts?" "Forgive me, King Ablin, you did." He leaned on his right leg as he regained his composure. "Then do so." King gave a swift motion in the direction he wanted his servant to leave, which the messenger followed, and scurried away from the room. King Ablin returned to his chair, and motioned for Sir Duval to sit beside him. "Forgive my foolish messenger. He's a bit too much about himself lately. He has been that way since I've met him, my king." King Ablin frowned as the Zillion sat down. "Dispense with the 'my king' remarks. You've known me longer than most my lords would care to admit. I wager they'd swear such a thing in front of Zalnia and suffer the consequences instead of admitting the simple truth." Sir Duval let out a deep laugh. The traveling Prince Ablin and his troublesome curiosity. "And no more needs to be spoken of those old days." He joined in the laughter. "I suppose you did not call on me to reminisce about old warm days." "No, I did not. Follow me and see the reason why I summoned you, my friend." King Ablin stood as his friend followed. After leaving the room, the two passed Queen Falcines' own reading room, 4 separate supply rooms filled with a multitude of clay pots containing different amounts of dry dye, including a rare shade of turquoise made from berries growing on an uninhabited isle south of the Boldna Island, south of the Boldna Isles, which they begun to call Ablinth in honor of the king, and fabrics for the ongoing creation of more historical tapestries to decorate the halls. Eventually, they arrived at a door, which was guarded by 2 men, one on each side. Upon seeing their king, they spoke their greetings and used their keys to unlock 4 different locks on the door. They stepped aside for the pair to enter. "Close the door behind you, Duval." While the Zillion did as he was asked, King Ablin lumbered to the other side of the room and parted heavy, embroidered silver lame curtains. Light engulfed the room so quickly, Sir Duval shielded his eyes momentarily as they adjusted to the brightness so abruptly. He knew this was one of the treasure rooms, but had never been inside. Taking a sweeping survey, he was not surprised to see heaping mountains of precious gems and rare metals piled against the wall. The center of the room, and a small area in front of the door and the curtains, were the only open areas lacking extravagance. Eventually, his vision rested on a disturbed section of the treasures, where an empty tall green vase, with silver and gold flowers painted on its sides, leaned against a pile of riches much smaller than the others in the room. "What's missing?" Sudraba pointed at the vase. He was not about to start some silly guessing game. "This is not being shown for my leisure." Some pearls, moon tidings, Rioja's tears, and emeralds, to name a few. King Ablin let out a sigh, which sounded more like a hiss coming from the back of his throat, before he continued. "Somehow the bastard got in here and pilfered the crowning scepter as well." How? Vizian could not believe a thief on his own sneaked in and stole something so prized, so heavily guarded without so much as a cough or warning from the guards. "That is what I would like to know, Duval. I was told Narland's gate was opened, ever so briefly last night, from some of my own ears on the streets." "Narland's gate?" Ablin, you aren't thinking Lord Rope. Duval, I know he probably had a part to play in this insult. I hear about the whispers, the unseen meetings. They think they're playing some sort of master game, like shadows dancing at night. If I strike out at them all at once, Sudraba will crumble from the violence. He waited for a response, but his friend gave none. Instead, he watched him stride towards the door. "The two who manned Narland's gate last night are named Rick Mertiel and Walter Paulus." "Thank you." Sudraba left without further explanation. He closed the door as he did so and proceeded to the barracks. Rioche watched over him. King Ablin pulled the curtains back into place, leaving him in darkness and inner turmoil. Storm clouds swept across Danlos and headed east, bringing with them humidity on the wings of gusting winds and the promise of rain. Merchants and townspeople alike scurried throughout the fort city to finish their daily work before the storm's precipitous arrival. Guards, too, sought shelter in their posts near the gates. The fear of rusting armor outweighed their responsibility to properly watch over the city streets. Danlos had not been a large city filled with citizens running this way and that. Originally established as a fort, it rose to prominence after King Narland's father and mother abdicated the throne due to invaders from the south, only to be cut down by spies for their troubles. With the child Prince Narland under his protection, General Melville fled to Danlos and rallied troops from every nearby town, hamlet, and orphanage to garrison east of Sudraba Castletown. From there, they fought for years to reclaim the throne in Narland's name. Anastasia knew parts of the city fairly well. Her family owned a house in the Panlow ward, which was colloquially referred to as Burnt Street. She had visited the markets frequently as a child and as a young woman. To her and many of the elites in Sudraba, the best tailor in all the kingdom lived at the northern end of the market. With her mother, she would visit the Favrant ward, which was filled with street performers on a daily basis. They explored the ward so often she could, at one point, pinpoint what shops were closest solely by the aromas of the different baked and cooked goods. Yet, her experiences could not quite overcome her current exhausted state. For most of the day since they had entered Danlos, Anastasia followed her mongrel of a savior through filthy alleyways, never nearing the bustle of the busier parts of the streets of the city. Frequently, she did catch smells of baked goods and the blood of fresh butchered meat, but she was unable to figure out where they were. She was certain, if given the chance, she would have devoured the meat raw and cleaned out a whole baker's shop and still had room for dessert. The few times Anastasia asked about food or drink, she was answered with a guttural no, and ordered to follow Tegan one direction or another. Thoughts of screaming crossed her mind. I could have the guards arrest him and say he kidnapped me. Then I could convince some of my father's and mother's friends to deliver me to Palmina. A quick favor there, and I could be on a boat before Gevard has left Danlos. But would anyone grant me these favors without question? The lack of certainty gave her pause as she reasoned to herself that that plan was a last resort. Her family was considered reputable and honest, so her heart and mind were at odds, disagreeing on any course of action. Would that be right for me to ruin? Haven't I already done so? Eventually she exited the wretched alleyway and let out a muffled cry. Burnt Street! Oh, not many people call it that outside of Danlos. His voice was markedly higher in tone than usual. He continued out into the street, retaining his pace and direction. I don't suppose you know why Panlow Ward has that name, do you? Without hesitation, Anastasia gave a reply from the deep recesses of her memory. Had to do with Panlo's own great granddaughter. She lost her husband during the war in the north. The loss pained her so much she set fire to a home, killing herself and burning down many of the homes in the area. They rebuilt the ward and painted everything black in somber remembrance of her. It seems like I was told a different tale. What do you mean? From what I was told, Solana, Panlo's great-granddaughter, met a very unpleasant fate, which robbed her of... Tegan paused. He could not settle on an appropriate word to use. Robbed her of what? She was not going to let him slip back into mutterings and grunts for responses. Conversation would keep her mind off food. Well, I'll spare you the details, but what they did to her was abhorrent. For some time afterward, she was an empty vessel. Gregor took her soul back to Zalnia, but her body remained. She ate with her family, went to the public baths, and continued doing everyday responsibilities, but she did not say another word. Tegan faced Anastasia before he finished. But when Sulana found where her tormentors lived, cousins of some of her neighbors, she burned their homes to the ground. Their pleas for forgiveness were drowned out by the maniacal laughter of Sulana as the fires engulfed her, the street, and her tormentors. The ward remained a charred waste for quite some time. After a while, people rebuilt the area in stone, painted them black, and called it Burnt Street, because they feared a similar tragedy if they did not keep the memory of Sulana seared into the area. Tegan promptly spun around and continued trekking through Burnt Street. He did not expect, nor want, for that matter, to discuss a story of something that happened generations ago anymore. At least not with Anastasia. It had no relevance to his current situation. He needed to figure out what to do with her. He turned his head, glancing back to see if she was still following him, which was the case. That's not what my father and mother told me. To Higgins, matter-of-fact style of the story was not to her liking. Horrible deeds are done, and horrible deeds are paid in kind. Trying to wash blood with fire? That doesn't make any sense as a story to tell a child. Why would Solana do that? Tegan's tale also indirectly labeled her parents as liars, which she would not tolerate. Not from the stranger. What now? Tegan did not turn around. He simply stopped, closed his eyes, let out a short breath. They wouldn't lie to me about something like that. They're honest people. Being honest doesn't make them right. Perhaps that was what they heard. I told you what I heard. Doesn't make it more truthful, nor did I say it was. They only agree that the ward was burned down, which story is the truth, with two widely different reasons as to why. The one that sounds better. Tegan looked toward the city and sniffed the air. Despite its stench, the smell of rain filled the air. He started walking once more. Let's go. I'd prefer not to get caught in the storm. At first, the rain fell as a light drizzle. Then it slowly grew in ferocity. A majority of Donlos's citizens found shelter or retired for the day, unwilling to contend with the elements any longer. However, a few people besides Anastasia and Tegan roamed the streets, for one reason or another. Walking down one street, the pair avoided two groups, dancing around each other. The groups consisted of men, women, and children, in nothing more than undergarments. With outstretched arms and faces pointed upward, they moved frantically, bordering on unfettered elation. They chanted phrases which sounded like gibberish to anyone within earshot, and hugged each other when they collided into one another, an occurrence that happened far too frequently to be considered accidental to any observer. Anastasia knew of them. They were referred to as water seers by kinder people, and insane frauds by the rest. Water seers claimed to be people who believed each droplet of rain possessed fragments and messages from all the souls of those who had ever lived, even potential words from the gods themselves. They also claimed they could hear the ever-flowing cascade of voices, and trained to selectively hear a few piercing through the flood of all the others. Those considered truly divine in their practice alleged they could hear and decipher all the voices in a rainstorm. Seeing them up close for the first time, Anastasia scoffed at the sight. I'd rather be caught dead by Gebhard than be seen looking like one of these damned fools. In a nearby alleyway, she could see a group of homeless children and teenagers huddled together. In hushed tones, some of the boys ogled at the exposed breasts of the water seer women, making crude jokes about what they do, proclaiming their grand sexual prowess. To demonstrate their abilities, they grabbed and pinched at the breasts and asses of the girls in their own group, demanding they grow theirs like the water seer women. Most of the girls responded by smacking at groping hands or pinching and punching in retaliation. As Anastasia as Anastasia and Tegan passed, one girl caught a boy on the nose, causing a trail of red to flow down his face and mix with the rain. Eventually, the older boys and girls settled the others down and told them they had seen where the water seers left their clothes and explained their plot to steal any valuables they could, as well as the clothes for laughs. Anastasia wanted to warn the water seers, but she remembered something her mother always told her when she was a young girl, wanting to stay outside despite the threats of rain looming. Only fools act in the rain, dear. Well, it looks like you were gifted a fool for an eldest daughter, Mother. The thought pained her deeply. Then, out of the corner of her blurred vision, she spotted a faint glint of hope and stopped. She stared at the end sign rocking back and forth in the rain. I'm not going any farther. Anastasia stomped her feet and did not move from her spot. Tegan continued down the street. I am not going any farther, she yelled. Finally, he turned back, with a scowl deeply carved on his features. He glided back to her, avoiding the puddles forming on the streets. He stopped a hand's width from her face. His black bulgy eyes narrowed and twitched. She shuddered in spite of herself. With what money? People aren't likely to welcome soaking wet strangers a place to rest without some form of compensation. The heat of his breath struck her face. I can't go on. I'm starving. I'm tired. I'm cold. I'm drenched. You can keep marching, and you can right off a cliff and into the ocean for all I care. But I'm staying here tonight, and only Grigdor's going to take me away. Anastasia glared back at Tegan as the rain drenched them to the bone. I cannot let him drag me wherever he desires. I will not substitute one monster governing my life for another. The water seers still chanted in the background. Fine. If they take you, even without money, by all means, take advantage of their kindness. I'll pass by tomorrow at dawn. If you're not ready, waiting out in front, I will leave Danlos without you. Tegan moved in the direction of his next destination. Caught off guard by his response, Anastasia stared at his back. It took her a moment to realize he was equally as willing to let her accompany him or go her own way. Disappearing behind the wall of rain, she shouted at him, Where are you going? No reply came. Anastasia looked around to see if anyone else had seen them. Both groups of water seers and the homeless children had remained enclosed in their own little worlds. You water seers might want to keep an eye on your belongings. There are a whole bunch of pranksters hanging around. She watched as two groups took her warning to heart and dispersed behind the curtain of rain. Once alone, she stepped into the inn, which felt warm and welcoming, and was greeted by an elderly woman sweeping the floor near the entrance. End of chapter 2. Whew. Okay, so yeah, that is a bit. That's a bit different. It needs cleaned up. Yeah, that is. I was wondering how I was going to feel about this, and I kind of figured I would not like this, and I am already not liking this. But that's what happens. That's what happens sometimes with these things. So, yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your day, weekday, weeknight, everything in between. And yeah, what's today? Okay, so it will be the 24th. 24th we'll continue this, and it'll be chapter 3, 4, maybe 5. I gotta see something. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I will say this: chapter 4 is when it kind of gets a little less pointed. Chapter 4, there's a character introduced that's probably my favorite character in the whole book. So, yeah. So it might be just 3 and 4, maybe 3, 4, and 5, depending on how the reading goes. So that's it. Thanks once again.